Chapter 12. Nurses and Doctors. Section 1. As they were driving home, Mary told Arthur what Lady Robinson had said. This put both of them in a fairly good mood for the rest of the journey. Arthur was very busy over the next few weeks, tying up the loose ends concerning the contract he had recently negotiated. He had to make one more trip to the Persian Gulf to finalize the deal. While he was there, he was approached by several other people who expressed an interest in his firm's products. He telexed his office to find out what delivery dates he could offer his potential customers. Sir John himself phoned Arthur at his hotel and instructed him to delay his return and to explore the possibility of finding an agent to act for the company in the Gulf, as it seemed that the demand was expanding sufficiently to warrant it. Arthur again went to see the commercial attaché, who recommended a number of likely people, from whom Arthur chose one, a Mr. Abdul Aziz. Mr. Aziz and Arthur flew back to London together, where the rest of the details were taken care of. When Sir John, David Masterson and Arthur had seen Mr. Aziz off at Heathrow, Sir John told Arthur to take a couple of weeks off. He was very grateful for this, as he felt exhausted after the globe-trotting he'd been doing. The first thing he did was to sleep for 12 hours solid. In the morning, Mary brought Arthur his breakfast in bed, together with the post. There were 3 letters, 2 of which were bills. The third letter was from his sister Jennifer, telling him the good news that she had qualified as an SRN, State Registered Nurse, and inviting him and Mary to a party that she and her 2 flatmates were having to celebrate the occasion. Arthur was delighted about this. What with one thing and another, he hadn't been able to see much of Jennifer for a month or 2.
Hello, do come in. Are you friends of Jenny's or Deirdre's?
Well, actually, I'm Jennifer's brother, and this is my wife, Mary.
Oh, yes. I can see the likeness now. Well, sling your coats in the bedroom through there, and then come on through.
Right.
Hello, you two.
Hello.
You're still alive, then.
Trust you to give us a warm welcome. Anyway, it's nice to see you, and congratulations.
Thanks. Hello, Mary.
Hello.
I must say you've done wonders with Arthur's appearance.
Oh.
He used to be as scruffy as anything before he was married, if you remember. Christopher! If you can tear yourself away for a moment, come and meet my brother, Arthur. And his wife, Mary.
Hello.
Hello. Are you from the hospital?
Yes, I'm a junior registrar, if you know what that is.
Well, I don't know much about the medical profession, but according to the programs I've watched on television, registrars appear to work about 100 hours a week.
Well, it's not quite that bad, but it does get a bit hectic at times. As a matter of fact, I've got to leave you all pretty soon.
Oh.
I'm supposed to be on duty now, but somebody else is currently standing in for me for a couple of hours.
Hard luck. I'm glad it's not me. I wouldn't fancy working all night. It's bad enough for my old man. He's a country GP. He has to turn out in the middle of the night on the odd occasion.
I've met your dad, actually. Jenny and I went down there a couple of weekends ago.
I don't think you've met Deirdre, have you? This is my brother, Arthur.
Hello.
Deirdre's just qualified too.
Ah, well done. Are you going to stay on at the hospital?
Yes, I'm going to have a short holiday, and when I come back, I'm going to be a staff nurse in the children's ward.
You'll need a lot of patience to do that, I expect.
Well, you do, I suppose. You've got to like children. But there's one good thing about it. 99% of them get better.
Yes, that's true. Must be better than working in a geriatric ward.
Oh, I don't know. I quite enjoyed my spell with the old folks when I was training. They're quite like children in many respects.
And what about you, Jennifer? Are you staying on now you've passed?
Yes, I'm going to work in the maternity ward. That's Christopher's speciality. He's going to do
Hello, you two. Hey, this is a lovely party, Jennifer. I am enjoying myself.
Now I've got you two on your own, I suppose you might as well know. Christopher and I are going to get engaged.
Oh!
Section 2. The passage comes from Flights of Angels, a novel by Paula Milne based on a BBC television series.
Mrs. Tate was not so much ill as old. How old, no one was quite certain, but in her late 80s at least. Of all the patients in her care, Shirley found Mrs. Tate the most disturbing. Her severe arthritis caused her constant pain, and the drugs, while dulling the pain, dulled her mind as well. Her disjointed thoughts, like her twisted, crippled limbs, moved in uncoordinated jerks, leaping from one subject to the next. There was no apparent logic in her utterances, no intelligible chain of reasoning, and yet the effort that went into the utterances, the violent passion behind each dislocated statement, seemed to suggest, to Shirley at least, that the old lady was urgently trying to communicate something. Sometimes she'd hang her head from side to side, clenching her teeth and groaning, as if struggling with some terrifying memory that had suddenly emerged from the anguished tangle of threads her mind had become. Shirley'd sometimes sit with her when she was like this, watching the struggle between the old lady and whatever it was that was tormenting her. She wouldn't speak, or even touch her, yet she felt the old woman was aware of her presence, aware that she had a silent ally in her struggle. Today, however, Mrs. Tate was quiet. She lay in her corner bed, watching the activity on the ward through hollow eyes. Shirley, as she made her round, stopped by the bed and looked at her. Mrs. Tate's eyes gazed unblinkingly back, her mouth sagging open slightly. "Mrs. Tate?" Shirley picked up the thin wrist and felt for a pulse. It was there, a faint, stubborn flicker of life. "We're probably transferring her to the side ward this evening," an auxiliary hissed the message into Shirley's ear as she passed. "They reckon she's on the way out." Shirley looked down at the woman. Under her fingers she could still feel the flickering pulse, and she closed her hand around the thin, frail wrist. The boundary between life and death lay in that quivering pulse, and Shirley, not for the first time, was struck by its fragility. She looked around her at the brightly lit ward, at the colour and motion, and her eyes blurred with tears. She wasn't crying for Mrs. Tate, or even for herself. She was crying because a life was nearing its conclusion, and no one seemed to think it very significant. And she realized as she stood there that perhaps it wasn't very significant. In a week's time she wouldn't even remember Mrs. Tate herself, just as she'd forgotten so many patients that had died before her. And if death wasn't significant, then neither was life, and the thought appalled her. She saw that her own life, albeit a clumsy, confused affair, was something to be savoured. She'd snatch at happiness where she could, and she'd fill the gaps, and she knew for certain that there'd be gaps, with joy. For joy, or so it seemed to her at the moment, was a commodity readily available, if you could only summon up the spirit to pursue it.
Oral Practice 1. Practice saying these sentences from the dialogue.
My wife, Mary. And this is my wife, Mary. I'm Jennifer's brother, and this is my wife, Mary. Well, actually, I'm Jennifer's brother, and this is my wife, Mary.
if you remember. Before he was married, if you remember. As anything before he was married, if you remember. As scruffy as anything before he was married, if you remember. He used to be as scruffy as anything before he was married, if you remember.
Weekends ago. A couple of weekends ago. Down there a couple of weekends ago. Jenny and I went down there a couple of weekends ago.
Have you? Deirdre, have you? You've met Deirdre, have you? I don't think you've met Deirdre, have you?
I expect. Do that, I expect. Patience to do that, I expect. A lot of patience to do that, I expect. You'll need a lot of patience to do that, I expect.
Oral Practice 2. Listen to the dialogue and then take the part of A. So you're a nurse now, then? What's it like?
Well, I must say I quite enjoy it.
But don't you have to work awfully long hours and watch people dying and do all sorts of unpleasant things for people?
That's very true, but there are all sorts of things that make you feel good.
Really? What sort of things? I'd be terribly depressed if I were amongst sick people all the time. I just know I could never be a nurse, or a doctor for that matter.
Well, you have to have the right temperament. I personally like to feel I'm helping people, and there's always plenty to do.
So you don't have time to get too emotionally involved with people's problems?
That's about it. But you can do a lot for your patients by being kind and sympathetic and encouraging a calm atmosphere, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's obvious to me anyway that you enjoy what you're doing. I think that if I were in hospital, I wouldn't mind being looked after by you.
That's the nicest thing anybody said to me today.
Now, wind the tape back to the beginning of this dialogue, and this time, speak at the same time as A. Remember that A speaks first. Now, here's the dialogue again, and this time, you take the part of A. Begin now.
Well, I must say I quite enjoy it. That's very true, but there are all sorts of things that make you feel good. Well, you have to have the right temperament. I personally like to feel I'm helping people, and there's always plenty to do. That's about it. But you can do a lot for your patients by being kind and sympathetic and encouraging a calm atmosphere, if you know what I mean. That's the nicest thing anybody said to me today.
Oral Practice 3. This passage comes from the novel Doctor in the House by Richard Gordon. Listen carefully and then answer the questions in your book. Surgery was Sir Lancelot's life, and St. Swithin's was his home. He had given more of his time for nothing to the hospital than ever he used to make his fortune. He was president or vice-president of almost every students' club, and supported the rugby team from the touchline in winter with the same roar he used on ignorant dressers in the theatre. During the war, he slept every night at the hospital in the bombing, and operated on casualties in an improvised theatre in the basement as long as they came in. A team of students lived in as well, and he used to play cards with them or share a pint of beer, actions which at first caused as much dismay as if he had arrived to operate in his underpants. One night, St. Swithin's was hit while he was operating. The theatre rocked, the lights went out, and part of the ceiling fell in. But Sir Lancelot simply swore and went on. Bombs to him were just another irritation in surgery, like fumbling assistants and blunt knives, and he treated them all the same way. The only time Sir Lancelot became at all subdued was when he talked of his retirement. It hung over him all the time I was on his firm. The prospect of his losing his 2 days a week at St. Swithin's depressed him, though he was cheered by remembering that the hospital would immediately acknowledge him as an emeritus consultant, and perhaps call him in for cases of supreme difficulty. His connection with St. Swithin's would therefore not be completely broken. He could go on meeting the students at their clubs, and as for surgery, he could continue that in private. One day, shortly after I left his firm, he disappeared. He said goodbye to no one. He left his work to his assistant and wrote a note to the chairman of the governors, simply stating he would not be in again. The hospital radiologist explained it later with an X-ray film. Sir Lancelot had a cancer in his stomach and had gone off to his cottage in Sussex to die. He refused to have an operation. Oral Practice 4. Word formation. Listen to the examples first.
Let me introduce you to some of my friends. This is Charlie. He's a professor of physics.
Oh, so you're a physicist.
Oh, so you're a physicist.
This is Jack. He plays the trumpet.
Oh, so you're a trumpeter.
Oh, so you're a trumpeter.
Now you go on in the same way.
Let me introduce you to some of my friends. This is Charlie. He's a professor of physics.
Oh, so you're a physicist.
This is Jack. He plays the trumpet.
Oh, so you're a trumpeter.
This is Keith. He's a lecturer in geography.
Oh, so you're a geographer.
This is June. She plays the violin.
Oh, so you're a violinist.
This is Stephen. He teaches mathematics.
Oh, so you're a mathematician.
This is Anne. She's an expert in economics.
Oh, so you're an economist.
This is Gillian. She does research into history.
Oh, so you're a historian.
And finally, this is Bob. He's a student of chemistry.
Oh, so you're a chemist.
That's the end of Oral Practice 4. Oral Practice 5. Use of the passive with prepositional verbs. Listen to the examples first.
I haven't got time to deal with these letters now.
Yes, but they must be dealt with soon.
Yes, but they must be dealt with soon.
And I certainly can't look at that report.
Yes, but it must be looked at soon.
Yes, but it must be looked at soon.
Now you go on in the same way.
I haven't got time to deal with these letters now.
Yes, but they must be dealt with soon.
And I certainly can't look at that report.
Yes, but it must be looked at soon.
And I haven't got enough money to pay for this furniture.
Yes, but it must be paid for soon.
I don't feel like calling on Mr. Humphreys.
Yes, but he must be called on soon.
I can't account for the money I've spent.
Yes, but it must be accounted for soon.
We still can't agree on the price.
Yes, but it must be agreed on soon.
I don't know how to fill in this form.
Yes, but it must be filled in soon.
I can't attend to these repairs yet.
Yes, but they must be attended to soon.
That's the end of Oral Practice 5. Oral Practice 6. Word formation. Listen to the examples. Let me tell you some of the things I do. First, I smoke cigars.
Good. I like cigar smokers.
Good. I like cigar smokers.
But for a living, I write textbooks.
Good. I like textbook writers.
Good. I like textbook writers.
Now, you go on in the same way. Let me tell you some of the things I do. First, I smoke cigars.
Good. I like cigar smokers.
But for a living, I write textbooks.
Good. I like textbook writers.
And I go to church.
Good. I like churchgoers.
And sometimes I teach languages.
Good. I like language teachers.
But I used to clean windows.
Good. I like window cleaners.
And I play drafts.
Good. I like drafts players.
And I once directed a film.
Good. I like film directors.
Finally, I own race horses, of course.
Good. I like racehorse owners.
That's the end of Oral Practice 6. Oral Practice 7. Dictation. First, cover up the passage and listen, please.
One of the changes in the world that has come about recently is the tendency for more and more men to join the nursing profession. One of the compensations for being ill in hospital, at least for men, was the likelihood that there would always be plenty of pretty nurses in attendance. Now one could well find the job being done by men. Male nurses are now no longer used just to restrain violent mental patients, but are even being employed as midwives.
Now you'll hear the passage again, and this time you must write down what you hear.
One of the changes in the world that has come about recently is the tendency for more and more men to join the nursing profession. One of the compensations for being ill in hospital. At least for men. Was the likelihood that there would always be plenty of pretty nurses in attendance. Now, one could well find the job being done by men. Male nurses are now no longer used just to restrain violent mental patients, but are even being employed as midwives.
Now here's the passage again.
One of the changes in the world that has come about recently is the tendency for more and more men to join the nursing profession. One of the compensations for being ill in hospital, at least for men, was the likelihood that there would always be plenty of pretty nurses in attendance. Now one could well find the job being done by men. Male nurses are now no longer used just to restrain violent mental patients, but are even being employed as midwives.
Now check the dictation in your book. That's the end of Chapter 12.